Hello.
It's like Google Hangouts requires you to open up your camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does.
Huh, okay.
That's kind of really smart.
So, welcome to the Desert Blockchain Daylong event on Saturday, July the 29th, 2017. My name is Jay Carpenter, founder of Desert Blockchain. And today we are at Grand Canyon University, and we're going to be talking about the Hyperledger Project with Brandolino of IBM. We've got some folks that are kind of coming in. We didn't anticipate that there would be orientation today here at Grand Canyon University. I apologize for that. It's going to be a little bit chaotic at the beginning of this, but hang with us, and we should have an awesome program for you today. So, let's see. Before you mind checking, or Eileen, do you mind checking the audio on the Hangout and so forth? So let me tell you a little bit about Desert Blockchain. This is a meetup event that's designed for building community here in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as inviting anybody from anywhere in the world to join us for Hangouts. All of our events are live streamed and available, recorded and available on our YouTube channel. You can find all that at desertblockchain.com. And basically, we have two types of events at this point. We have the monthly event, which is on the last Wednesday of every month. And we just had one on the 26th of July from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And we were talking about Filecoin, Coinless, and SAF, which is a new set of innovation from Protocol Labs. And you can see the recording of that. It's generally lasts about an hour and a half from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time or Arizona time. So that's the last Wednesday of every month. Feel free to join us on that. And then on the last Saturday of July, October, January, and April, we have a day-long event. So this month, or this quarter, the day-long event is about Hyperledger Project. In October, we're planning an event which is real estate and blockchain, and that will be on, I believe, October 28th. So stay tuned for that. Just join the meetup at meetup.com/desert-blockchain, and that should get you to our meetup. So thanks for tuning in. Please bear with us for a few minutes while we get things set up and get some people settled in, and then what we'll do is we'll go around the room and introduce everyone so that we're familiar with what everybody's up to, what their expertise are, and also start to build community from those introductions. So, thanks everybody for coming. It's a little chaotic because we've got people that are going to be straggling in because of the lineup to get in for orientation. We've been working out some technical issues, imagine that. I got some comments. We had our first session here at Grand Canyon University on Wednesday night, and I got some comments that a lot of it was focused on my hindsight. I want to let you know, I think my hindsight is awesome. But we're kind of working out the details on the video setup and everything else. So basically the way it's going to go today is we're going to go around and do introductions, and people are going to be straggling in. And part of the reason for the introductions is to build community here in Phoenix so that we kind of know what everybody's interest is, what you're up to, what you'd like to get out of today, and we can kind of continue to build upon that. And then that'll last about 30 minutes or less, and then we've got Rose Brandolino from IBM, who's going to be talking about the Hyperledger Project until about noon. We're going to break for lunch, assuming they deliver it to the right place. We had a little mix-up on the rooms. And then that'll last for about an hour, and that's also an opportunity for everybody to kind of hello, good morning, Jerry. Everybody to kind of get to know one another and continue to build a community. And then at 1 o'clock, we'll come back and Rose has a formal hands-on presentation for Hyperledger so that you can actually log on and learn Hyperledger a little bit. So with that, I'm going to step out of the camera and kind of move it around this way. And if you will introduce yourself and let us know what you're interested in getting. I know I got your name and it's escaping me at the moment, so sorry about that.
It's okay. Hi, good morning. My name is Balazs Kalman. I work with Rose, IBM, and I'm in the same distribution market with customers as she's supporting. I've been involved with blockchain technology at IBM over a year now. I'm the market segment technical focal point. I work with the research labs, and we've got 5, 6, 7 of them worldwide. I can't even name them. And I usually do presentations. I'm also building with a colleague who's working at one of our labs. We're building a 2-day public, no charge workshop that I'm sure is going to come to town too. I'm not sure where we're going to start it, but our assets are almost all built. I need to do about maybe 3 more presentations, and we have to do 1 more lab that connects the whole blockchain ecosystem to the existing business system. That's 1 lab that we have to still do. So if you want to catch me, I can tell you as much as I'm able to tell you about what we're doing. And in some cases, my lips are sealed, but as far as IBM's participation in the Hyperledger project, I can talk freely about that because that's our open source effort.
Awesome.
Sorry.
And do you have any idea when the workshops will be here in town? And where are you located, by the way?
I'm just a hop away near Ontario Airport on the other side.
Good.
On the wrong side of the border. My brother lives down in South Chandler, and I'm here often. I get customers here, but I would say it would be sometime in the fall, hopefully.
Okay.
Well, in the winter, definitely, because I'm not flying to the sun. It's 121 over that -5. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask questions because I think it's awesome that you're a year into the blockchain. You're like a veteran.
He's a veteran.
So, well, well, I don't want to take all the time, but it's really funny. I started studying Bitcoin many years ago, and now I'm sorry that I didn't invest $100 in 2010 because today it was worth $74 million.
That's right.
Now you can still grab Ethereum, and it's really going north very fast. As of 2 days ago, no, as of the 24th, the largest domestic Russian airline called S7 is now, you can book the flights with Ethereum.
Oh, wow.
So cryptocurrency is coming whether the banks like it or not.
See, I've been crying because in about July of 2015, if I'd written a check for $2,000 into Ether when they first did their ICO, it would have been worth $8 million about a month ago. So
Always missing the boat.
yeah. So anyway, we could go on and on about that. So, thank you. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, the bathrooms are right across the hall. Help yourself to some goodies over here. There's coffee and snacks and things like that. We will have lunch catered in around noon. So
Please eat the food.
yeah, please eat the food.
Get a bowl.
So Corey, go ahead.
There's a jillion college kids here.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Corey Williams, and I've been working in blockchain for about 9 months, and my specialty is more working in things that blockchain can do to help human rights around the world. So currently I'm working with conflict minerals issue coming out of the Congo and the minerals that go into our phones, because that's adding money to the rebels who are fueling a war that's gone on for decades. So that's what I'm working on now, and I'm really interested in Hyperledger because I think that could be a great landing spot. So I'm excited for your presentation today and to learn a little bit more about that. Also, please make sure you sign the registration outside and check your plugs, because if you're having issues or anything, I'll be helping you, and I've got some extension cords and everything. So we want to make sure everybody can stay powered up through the day as we work on this project. So thank you.
And she already helped me. Morning, Mark Goldstein, International Research Center. I was an engineer and engineering manager for 18 years. I've had a boutique consulting and research firm for 25 years now. So I do get to work from home, and that's a wonderful thing. Mostly I do technology, market research, business intelligence, and public policy. IoT has been a long-standing practice area of mine before even that term existed. We used to call it things like machine-to-machine, M2M, and other things. So I really did my first IoT project probably in 1978 with Apple IIs. I'm on the board and executive committee of the Technology Council, about 850 tech firms in the state. I work on the public policy committee. I've written a blockchain state public policy last year. I'll hand out a hard copy on that because I'm revising it this year. There were 2 bills in the Arizona legislature, one respectable bill for blockchain as electronic signature enablement, and the other that we jokingly call blockchain because it was a bill to keep blockchain type technology from being used to track firearms. And that was a little ridiculous. It got us some national press. I'm also on the board and executive committee of the Telecom and Information Council, involved in the Energy Consortium, Arizona Energy Consortium, bio industry. So if you're looking for connections across tech industry space, glad to talk with you, connect on LinkedIn and whatever. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, I'm John King. I have a small training company. We've been in business since 1988. I do mostly stuff with developers and DBAs and managers of those people learning new technologies. I started into blockchain about 1.5 years ago when Jay started having these meetings, and I've learned quite a bit. What I'm really interested in right now is trying to find enterprise use cases where I can get consensus and things that will actually work at the scale that enterprises need to work at. And so that's my big interest in today and the future with blockchain.
Okay, I'm Bill Maher. I run a little company called Fish Computing, and I've been building PCs and radios and modems, cell phones, all the way before PCs were even started. I actually worked for a few weeks at IBM and built that before it was even working on PCs. So a lot of this stuff is sort of old hat, I suppose. And as far as the Bitcoin, I actually have a bag of Bitcoin somewhere in my garage. When I first got started, I was actually helping a guy that was putting together these machines with FPGAs, and they used the Beagle board that I was designing as a custom version of the Beagle board just for him. And then he promptly went out of business, and he says, well, I can't really pay you. Everybody associated with Bitcoin's going out of business, but you can have this bag of stuff. That's all I can pay you with. And I looked at it, and I started using them as poker chips. So that was my entry, and then I met Jay.
Which one was one Bitcoin?
Yeah, it was one.
Yeah. So you were giving away today what's worth $2,500. That's sort of like play poker chips.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
So
I assume I can make it back. You know?
What's the name of those things? Cassius coins? The physical coins the guy made?
Yeah, it was a physical coin. It had a little, on one side it was a I don't know what, it was the same size as a cookie chip. And in the back, there was a code, I don't think it was a QR.
Those actually are worth more than the Bitcoin value itself, because they're collector's items.
Oh,
So, you know, now I'm gonna be telling my grandkids, instead of the I walked 5 miles in the snow thing, it was I didn't buy Bitcoin, it was penny a Bitcoin.
So my point is it just depends on where you kind of get in on the whole craze, right? Because I got in way too early, because I was saying, I never touched Bitcoin, look at what happened. So, but my new thing, hopefully it'll be better than Bitcoin, is I'm actually working on a replacement to Raspberry Pi and BeagleBoard, because I designed custom versions of Raspberry Pi, BeagleBoard, and Arduino and other stuff. My new craze now is this module that has a multispectral radio, a processor that's the equivalent of better than a Raspberry Pi. And this is all done so that you can actually plug this into a small thing. So you just need a little bit of power, a little bit of air to do your antennas. And now all of a sudden we could build, cell towers, you could build all kinds of I/O using these modules. So I was really kind of quite excited about that. And of course, the reason I'm here is I want this to run eventually, all the Bitcoin related stuff. It could be yeah, exactly. So this will end up basically being a radio, and you can just imagine that this will be like a general node. And I'm hoping to install Hyperledger on this thing as part of the stuff we're doing, because there's a billion and one uses for this stuff. So that's why I'm excited. So thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I was a little distracted. If you didn't say it, I'm going to repeat it, but Bill runs the largest meetups in town. I think you've got, what, 4,000 people on your meetups?
Yeah, all together, yeah.
And he runs meetups on drones, on maker spaces, augmented reality, virtual reality, all that stuff. So
yeah, there's a new meetup I'm coming up that I started working on called ambient computing, and the idea is the computer just disappears into the room, just like in Star Trek. So the computers will know what you're doing, and hopefully will keep track of who is in the building, and it'll take care of like man from uncle style.
So Bill, I'd like to acknowledge you for being the contribution you are for the community. It takes a lot of work to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay. I was remiss. I'm also organized the Oracle user group, so if anybody would like to talk to me about coming to the Oracle user group,
Oracle?
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that? All right, Jason, go ahead.
My name is Jason. I've been kind of involved in the blockchain space since early days of Bitcoin, 2009, 2010. I've been working a lot recently in peer-to-peer technologies like interplanetary file system or IPFS, as well as the associated libraries like libpdp and IPLD. Just really trying to work on a bunch of different open source projects at the moment, and so good to be done via technology. I'm trying to do it.
Awesome. And Jason also participated in the Ethereum IPFS meetup and hackathon up in Seattle in February, and came in second place. So
Awesome.
that was awesome. There's a lot of great videos, by the way, from that meetup, and I'd highly recommend you take a look at the Ethereum meetup, Ethereum IPFS meetup that was in Seattle at Galvanize.
Yeah, the project that we worked on was a carbon trading platform via an ERC20 token. So we did a lot of research on that and kind of just spent a few days on it really, and then flew out there to Seattle and presented that.
Cool. Thanks. George.
Hi, my name is George. I've been interested in blockchain for a little over a year now, and was originally into crowdfunding, and triple entry accounting systems really fascinated me. So just kind of in that space.
And George is also in a conversation about creating a blockchain collaborative space here in Phoenix. He's got some experience from ASU creating collaborative spaces, and Corey and George and few others and myself are looking at creating a collaborative workspace here at Phoenix for blockchain and distributed ledger technology. So. Chad?
My name is Chad, and I've been interested in the blockchain, I guess since about March when I started learning about Ethereum. And I'd kind of written the blockchain off because I looked at Bitcoin and I wasn't really impressed by it. But when I started learning about Ethereum and the fact that it's a framework instead of just a coin, it got me very interested. So I'm interested in a lot of things related to the blockchain, but being able to tie physical assets with intrinsic value to the ledger is highly attractive to me, and also the IoT applications and distributed power systems or decentralized power systems are interesting. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Thanks, Chad. Bruce?
Hi, I'm Bruce Walker. I'm actually an attorney, but I'm in a data science program. So I'm interested in finding out what all of these things are about. It's kind of cool listening to all the things everyone is doing and kind of getting connected in that way to understand how some of these technologies are evolving. Kind of interesting too to look at it from kind of like how the law might look at some of these things either now or in the future. So it's kind of like I don't know, it's really interesting, eye-opening to me. And yeah, I know Rose, so I'm here to support her. So be nice to Rose today.
So Bruce, thank you for reminding us that you're an attorney in this space. On Monday, I'm talking with another local attorney, and I think what we're going to propose is the last Wednesday of September for our monthly session. We'll have like a panel of attorneys that are specializing in the blockchain space and do kind of a open conversation about some of the legal issues that are emerging, especially around the initial coin offerings, and there's just a whole sort of turning a lot of things upside down that are happening in the legal realm. And in my view, the legal considerations are one of the key areas for innovation in this space.
That would be immensely useful for a lot of people working in this space.
Yeah, so kind of pencil in last Wednesday in September, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Arizona time, whatever that is. And I'll be announcing it on the meetup and so forth, but let's consider that we're going to dedicate that session to a legal roundtable on some of the legal considerations.
Yeah, and so much of that is still undefined too. Right?
Yeah.
Insurance too, that's the other problem.
Yep.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Brian.
That's Brian. My background is I came from like a DevOps and I was a solution architect. Now I'm working for a blockchain startup in town, so I'm kind of helping enable the blockchain development on the cloud platforms. So we have a team of like smart contract developers and standing up like private blockchains and things to just enable the development process through development all the way to production and back-end apps and things like that. So that's.
Can you share what your business model is?
We will. It's supply chain. Actually, Hoy's here. She's our CTO too. She's with us, and she can explain even more. But it's basically supply chain logistics on the blockchain.
Awesome.
Yep. And
they're talking.
The company is SweetBridge.
Yeah, SweetBridge will be here next month.
Yeah.
Our CEO and Scott Nelson will be here talking.
Yeah.
The whole presentation.
August 30th, and we don't know the location yet, but it will likely be here somewhere either on or near the Grand Canyon University campus. And we'll have SweetBridge doing a presentation on their supply chain initiative. And then we'll also have Aperio.cloud, which is also a local supply chain blockchain initiative, presenting as well. And so next month, for the monthly, it will be devoted to supply chain and the blockchain. So, anybody have any questions for Brian about Well, maybe we'll let Boyd
Yes.
answer questions next to each other. Okay. Mr. Neal.
My name's Lawrence Neal. I'm a retired system engineer from telecommunications. I worked on the original licensing for the original cell sites back in the 70s. So, and I'm interested in the blockchain Hyperledger. I became aware of it about 3 months ago for my little devices I'm doing with low rod UHF frequencies for long transmission. So I was looking to gather data from sensors and put them into a database and secure the devices that are out there with encryption using ST microelectronics ARM processors. So that's where I'm at right now. I have been out of basic networking for about 1.5 years. I had some health issues, and now I'm back where I'm back up. I feel good, and I'll be 67 next month. So I thought I'd get involved in some more meetups. And I've known Jay for a couple of years.
Great. We're glad you're here.
My first Bitcoin I bought in 2011 for $148. And then I turned around and sold it later when it dropped to about 102. I wish I would have kept it.
At least you didn't give it away.
Yeah.
Dan.
Hey, yeah, my name's Dan. Oh, you remember me? Okay. Yeah, I go to these meetups just for fun. I work for a small company, General Electric. I'm a pre-sales engineer too. I'm not here for that reason. I'm just here because I do for fun, right? So I'm looking forward to this. Background, I worked at HP Discover for GE, and they had like a little thing based on blockchain, and the guy was really steep in blockchain. And I said, well, what do you think about Bitcoin, Ethereum, any other big things out there? That he said, Hyperledger is the third one. So I'm like, okay, let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Hui. I'm a Swiftledge CTO, and then we are the local startup here, and then focusing on logistics supply chain, and then mainly on the topic called liquidity. So there are several kinds of the ideas, business models down the road, but right now we're really working on open source projects, getting the proof of concept, and start to build a community around those projects, and then see how we can roll out, and definitely involving virtual currency. So the idea is supply chain has this locked assets, locked capitals and locked talents. So how we can incentivize using tokens to unlock those and make the things can liquid using a virtual currency. So the whole idea is the participants of the network will own the network and will benefit from the network. So those are kind of a decentralized trust model. We are very interested by leading and innovating and bring possible consortium down the rails, can get us into the next centuries, whatever the future, it's kind of like a futurist, project, but we all know that the blockchain, technology empowers quite a lot of things, Bitcoin is built on trust, right? So those are things, personally, I'm very interested on how we are as a technologist, as a, whatever the industry can work together, and then to innovate and see what's the possible social impact down the road.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Muir. I work in messaging and directory technologies. I'm just here for general technology interest.
I'm sorry, what kind of directory?
Messaging and directory services.
Oh, cool. That's right up my alley. Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm T Hatch. It's my first startup. Not startup, but meetup I've been to. Startup meetup, they're all the same, right?
Your very first?
Very first.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm the virgin of the meetups. Don't take advantage of me. No, I come from the SATCOM world. I work with a teleport, a local teleport here in the valley. We do disaster recovery, a lot of primary uplink services for cable providers in the US. But I also work with a venture capitalist group, and the guy who started the VC told me that he met with some of the Hyperledger guys. I think there was a conference earlier this year out in the Texas area. It was one of the government conventions.
Okay.
And he mentioned there could be some interest. I'm available.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for attending. We're trying to make it a great first meetup for you. It's actually valuable.
You'll see in blockchain where we call it a genesis.
Yeah, this is your genesis meetup.
T, thanks for being here. You do realize it's a Saturday, right?
I know. It was an early morning.
Welcome to startup land.
You know, actually, I may have been in the wrong room here. I thought this was a Lego build.
It pretty much
That's
is.
our
You'll see.
project in the afternoon.
You'll see.
The Saturday morning. Well, it's Kurt Wedgwood. I'm with IBM, helping Rose, helping Blas. I head up a community within IBM around blockchain North America, focused on retail, consumer products, and our travel and transportation. So the supply chain is very interesting to me as well. And then my background is this nice, interesting convergence, because I'm trained as a process excellence or black belt consultant. So process, think about for the blockchain as we go through today. Marry that with innovation. I chair our innovation advisory board for Seattle University. So yes, I'm from Seattle. Yes, I'm looking forward to another never-ending game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. One of the longest games. I watched that in Vegas. Just, come on. So look forward to that.
It was a tie.
It was a tie. It just didn't, so maybe we'll have it. It helped us from the Seahawks perspective. So yeah, process, innovation, because this is a startup space. And then the third is the business network, having worked with businesses all around the world, bringing them together to find value. I think I heard the word creating synergies, creating a network, right? That's at the core of blockchain. So I'm trying to help all this come together with IBM at the core, trusted, build provenance, build truth. This is that moment where you get to play startup, you get to play process, you get to play with a bunch of companies. Lego may be one of them in the future, I'm not sure, but you know, that's where things are. I'll be helping out Rose from, I'd say probably more from where do we apply this? And anything that comes up, I'll back it up. But from a technical perspective, these are the two.
I have a thank you. I have a question for you folks from IBM. Other than what we mentioned here today so far, we haven't gone through the whole room, but what else are you seeing in the Phoenix community surrounding blockchain? Anything?
In the Phoenix community?
Yeah, so are there other companies, big companies? I mean, there are some big companies that are looking at this.
Yes.
Like we've had folks from Honeywell participating, American Express.
Yeah.
I think Wells Fargo has some interest down in Chandler. PayPal.
Many of them are actually members of the Hyperledger Project. Definitely the financial institutions, the major financial institutions are looking into it. The Honeywells, I think there was another one. But most of the major corporations that are headquartered here in the Valley are definitely looking at it. There's a few that I work with that are still in the exploratory phase, I would say. I'm trying to convince them into actually taking a closer look at it, because it's not a matter of if, right? It's a matter of when. They're going to start applying this to some of their business processes and some of their communication with suppliers, vendors, whatever. So some are a little behind, I think, the curve. But yeah.
So the area for here, at least in the local area, would be Avnet, a little bit more out of San Antonio, for their electronic parts and their supply chain visibility as well. Another local. Another that we just haven't spoken to, PetSmart Petco, right?
Well, I have.
Right.
Yeah.
But and I'm looking over the hospital side for the pet hospital. Right, there's a lot of opportunity inside of there.
Yeah.
It really is, as you go through, just kind of keep it open and think, oh, how else can we apply it? Package the idea and share it.
Well, for PetSmart specifically, Kurt, the use case that I brought to him, which I thought is a good one actually, is they sell live pets, right, in the store. So the potential safety issues around the provenance of the live pets and where they actually come from and being able to track them, right? From the pond, the farm, wherever they're coming from, all the way through to the purchase at the store, so.
My wife is talking
They're just
about
not there yet.
implanting a chip in me, so.
Yeah. You're gonna be on the chain?
That's
She already has a GPS bracelet.
So Rose, that would be the pedigree use case, right?
Yes.
And I do have one more. Last week, we had this distributed trade. I'm not trying to step on your humor. The last week's distributed trade, we did a hackathon where we awarded 10,000 quorum dollars. Sorry, quantum coin. And the winner in that, it's anybody here participated in hackathons? I think Jason.
Jason has.
Corey, anybody else? All right, so this is 24 hours. You come in a pair of clothes and you leave in the same pair of clothes.
You don't want a pizza?
It's tough. You bring so in this situation, just we did not have any premeditated ideas. Had to be invented there. So you form into teams, you come up with your idea, you use some blockchain technology to demo it, and then you pitch. Your pitch is only 4 minutes, so you really have to work fast. And, being the judge and seeing what can be created in 24 hours is always just inspiring. But in this one, we had 70 people, we had 20 teams, and the winner was actually one that took that last mile of package pickup and delivery. Oh, here, DHL is also blockchain. A little bit more over in Europe. Discussions there. But the idea, where you can say, hey, I've got an available load, I can be the Uber of package delivery. So that ended up winning. It was a big part, if you ever do your presentation and how you tell your story is so important. But the number two that just really probably could have won, but again, it's the package, was if we start to think about any moving vehicle that could be a mobile warehouse. Recording a pickup, the delivery, estimating timing. Right? The blockchain will record all this, but it's when we start to apply machine learning, advanced analytics on top of it, we're going to see patterns, we're going to see cubes that are available inside of really a moving truck, a moving car, a drone. That's where I think it just starts to get amazing. And somebody talked about drones earlier. Bill. Hey, take a look at Walmart issued a patent 2 years ago for drone use for package delivery with the blockchain.
Wow. Yeah, I actually saw that. My lawyer's involved with that.
Okay.
To the lawyers. Yeah.
It's always the way.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Kurt, for that. Because just bringing that up opens up the opportunity set to have some hackathons here. Through the Desert Blockchain, whatever, that could definitely be like another type of event that we host, and we're very interested in that. And I think the folks at GCU are interested in that. So, we've got a campus full of people that are focusing on cybersecurity and IoT and all that stuff. And we're kind of the beginning wedge of introducing some of this stuff. So we're very, very much interested in having hackathons and events that are hands-on like we're going to have this afternoon. So, and it's also, I want to put the message out there that we're very, very interested in continuing to have companies here locally participate in this and mix with students, mix with other people. And, we said it last Wednesday night, but this area is so broad and so vast that nobody's going to do this alone. It's got to be a collaborative effort. So,
and today we'll actually talk about some of those roles that are required in order to just pull off, a deployment as an example. So, elaborate more on that.
Cool. All right.
And I heard a blockchain last year, and I did dig into, but I know the technology will be disruptive, especially from decentralized. And this process will eliminate the middle stuff. So I heard JMR 2 days ago, and he said I have a blockchain here, and so I just went to the meetup and joined the blockchain group. And I studied and last night and I found out right now they have more and more people join in the blockchain, but they have a scalability problem now. So I think this is the beginning of the stage for the blockchain. So that's why I'm confident.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for trusting me when I said there's a blockchain meetup, and you had no idea what it was all about.
Here he
Something
is.
happened. So, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nina Hicklin, also new to blockchain. Just became interested over the past couple months and started reading and learning about it and found this meetup and thought it was awesome that this community is getting together to discuss the future of blockchain and all the applications. So I'm actually located in Tucson, Arizona, so drove up for the event, so it's great to be here.
Wow.
Work for first.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
So my name's Adam. We drove up from Tucson. I've got a couple of buddies and myself. We built 3 rigs. We've been mining Ethereum now for about a month or so. We've been doing a lot of research on other aspects of blockchain and things like that. And I'm interested in the Hyperledger project. So I'm here to learn.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
And is there anything in particular you'd like to get out of today? Yes, both of you, yeah. Because it sounds like you're both kind of new to the blockchain.
No, just as much as possible.
Yeah, just trying to absorb
everything.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Myself, Nilesh, and I'm working in the financial services industry. I'm new to blockchain, thinking about it for the last 6 months or so. I'm primarily interested in how blockchain can, or use cases in financial industry where we can apply it. And also my personal interest is more on the how we can use this to do some sort of social or the community work in future, or maybe how I can use it to change some of the political establishments, maybe in some of the developing countries as well. So it's like I'm looking more from the technology as well as the application of the blockchain and how do I contribute to society in long term.
Cool. You know, I'm glad you brought that up because like what Corey's working on and, you know, energy credits, underlying this whole conversation is I think everybody's sensing there's a whole new set of tools that could impact anybody pretty much anywhere on the globe that's got a network connection.
Yeah, we're literally reinventing the wheel, yeah.
Yeah, we're literally reinventing the wheel where there's this whole new realm of peer-to-peer trust, and you know, it's such a broad and blank canvas at this point.
This time we're trying to strap rockets onto it.
Yeah. Well, there is actually a company in town. It's called Nexus. They're officed on Middle Avenue, and they're looking at deploying a constellation of satellites that will carry their blockchain network. So,
yeah, I'm doing something similar with drones, where I'll have a bunch of these little modules, and I'll fly it along, I'll know the position, how much energy there is, and I could just fly it into, the idea is to create a mesh network that's all with blockchain, and it can do, you know, it'll just be a platform. So you
the mischief we can get into is almost unlimited.
It truly is.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Did you want to introduce yourself? Or?
Hi, I'm Ravi. I'm with DBA. More specific, I work on an ideal product called Netiza.
Oh.
I'm working on like I'm really interested by that. Blockchain is pretty new for me. I'm just learning and trying to get anything as possible.
Who do you work for that has Netiza?
Yeah, American Express.
American Express. Okay.
Oh, great.
Great.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, myself I am Santosh. I'm with Infosys. I'm working for American Express here. I first heard about blockchain in last October also. It's like through cryptocurrencies and the pop of cryptocurrencies. And it's like there was a rally in one of cryptocurrencies, the foremost I guess Dash. And I was a little excited about it. Like what is this space, and started exploring.
and slowly later on I got into Ethereum and Hyperledger, so which are like open source implementations, and started learning about it. So my intention is to application development side of blockchain. So I wanted to learn, meet people who are interested, and I came across like one of the meetups. And here I am.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Greg. Many years ago, I was a defense attorney, no longer. Over the course of that, I was involved in a lot of financial cases and became an intimately aware and experienced and have a pretty good understanding of the law regarding money laundering and forfeiture. I did a lot of cases where that was the subject, and later did a lot of consulting in that area. And I have kept my finger in it over the years. I write for a publication in New York. I work for Williams and Connolly's money laundering law report for a while. And recently, out of interest, I started studying Java and JavaScript. I wanted to kind of go, I see high tech is where it's at. I want to have a better understanding of it. And I just dove into it. And probably over the last 2 years, I've been completely fascinated with blockchain. I've been following it. I'm trying to learn more about it. I think it's going to create a massive shift in so many ways. And I would like to see how I can be involved in it. I see there's massive opportunity in it. And so I'm just diving in. And here I am.
Cool. All right. Is there anything in particular you'd like to get out of today?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. This is what I see. I see lots of opportunity, and most people obviously know about Bitcoin. And I've looked into Bitcoin quite a bit, and I see one of the things that is kind of keeping a more widespread acceptance and use of it is I think that I know all of you guys are technical people, and that's great, but I think that the average person is just so confused and overwhelmed by trying to understand what it is. And so I think that the interface between the technology and the average person needs to be simplified and made much more accessible. And I think that I have kind of a good feel for that, and I would like to somehow be involved in doing something like that. And so, I think I have a, based on my, I'm not really a tech person. I really threw myself into something that really kind of isn't my area. But I felt I needed to do that to be able to communicate with but I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect, in the way that it is presented and usable to the average person.
Absolutely.
And I would like to somehow throw myself into a position to kind of bridge it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Steve.
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Murphy. I'm the commodity trading advisor involved in commodities for almost my entire professional career, 35 years in the energy sector. I'm very interested in how to apply blockchain to peer-to-peer markets in local distributed electricity generation. That's what I'm passionate. I'm very interested in that field. In terms of what I'm interested in getting out today is I'm interested in learning about the product that you're going to demonstrate today. Wrap my head around the whole concept and learn more about it. Thank you very much.
Cool. Eileen, please.
Hi, I'm Eileen Kane, mostly I'm here with Jay today. My involvement with blockchain comes via Phoenix Comic-Con. I'm part of a nonprofit called RealTimeSteam.org, and we provide the science and technology programming for Phoenix Comic-Con, over 100 hours last year. About 50,000 people came through our programming, including a demonstration area. And blockchain was mentioned a couple times in our teacher track. We provide professional development to teachers who attend Phoenix Comic-Con and our program, and also in future economies and alternative economies. So if you have some ideas about that, we start planning in January for Memorial Day weekend. So give me your contact information and I'll send out the link in January. Thanks.
And I'd like to acknowledge Eileen because she makes a big contribution to the educational and the youth community here locally
through her activities, and most of it's out of her passion for making a difference. So, thank you. Good.
Last one.
Last one.
Jack Waterman, I'm workaday electrical engineer. You have usual side hustles like most of us. One of them was to make a variant. So I just.
Jack, do you mind speaking up just a little bit so we can get?
One of the things was an Ethereum miner, and got interested, didn't really know what blockchain was until this year. I can see how it's at the start of a revolution. One of the things we're working for is we're starting a nonprofit medical foundation associated with East Coast Hospital Chain. And we're primarily working on electrical stuff, electronics, but I can see that patients' records, privacy, and being able to open them up for researchers. And in addition to that, is a huge topic that affects everyone here with medical mistakes. I mean, it's unbelievable how much mistakes are accepted in the medical world. Pilots did that in a way. So I would think that I would like to kind of listen in on what blockchain's about, learn more about it, and see if this could eventually be applied to, like, going back to the provinces, going back further, what did this previous doctor do to this patient, and that kind of stuff. Then take, like I've been doing with a lot of patients. I think something like that would be a huge benefit.
Very interesting.
Cool. Okay, is there anybody online that would like to unmute and introduce yourself? Got a couple people online. We got a couple people.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is Scott Foster again. I attended the last meetup remotely. My interest in blockchain, at least for today, is learning more about Hyperledger. I haven't gotten the time to research it yet, so I think this would be a good introduction for me.
Cool. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Is there anything beyond it? Is there anything you're involved in that you'd like to announce to the community where you might need something or want to collaborate with anything?
Not at the moment. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around in terms of the applications that could actually be created that could benefit, like, my focus essentially is, like, I have family in overseas, and so seeing applications that could be built for the people in underrepresented regions, and see exactly what the benefit is. That's what I'm focused on. But there isn't any project I'm working on right now. It's just gathering information.
Cool. All right, thank you. Anybody else want to introduce yourself online? Okay, cool. So I know that took a little bit of time, probably more time than we expected, but how many conferences have you been to where you sit in this room full of people and you hear something, some sort of presentation, but you have no idea what anybody else is working on or doing? And that's part of what is available out of this format. I'm amazed at what the people in this room are up to, what you're interested in, and hopefully out of that 30, 40 minutes, whatever it was, there might be some seeds of collaboration that happen. So, all right. So
maybe we'll take a quick 2-minute break.
Sure.
If anyone wants to use the facilities, grab some food, grab some drinks, just real quick, and then we'll be right back.
And maybe test the
show real quick.
Yep. So let's see, it's 10:54, so everybody plan to be back here at 11. Okay.
Rose, you have an assistant for the composer side if you need some lab assistant, because he can do some JavaScript.
You played it. Oh, good JavaScript. Yeah. Totally.
I do not. You don't have to try. You want to just write something.
Since you had on this.
Yeah.
Stretch your legs.
So, Rose will talk about,
Oh, okay.
the biggest one is fat, which is.
Help me out here, Joe.
Next.
Oh, yeah.
Still under XUS. Okay, perfect. If you go to coinmarketcap.com, they're listed, they're like about a $45 million.
Yeah, because that small setup is something I could.
This is their website.
Yeah, click that.
That's good. Operating.
So what do you use?
Well,
here's it's a Mac, right? Why don't you email us or do you?
It'll be a little uncomfortable, but.
I didn't do it. I think we have a whole line of five. Screen share.
Where's your camera?
The camera is
There. No, I'm just asking. So I don't have
It's Okay, let's go ahead and get started again. Is everybody taking their seats? Started. Hello, folks. We can go ahead and yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen them yet. Yeah. Yeah, you heard my.
Yeah.
He was in town.
That could be trouble. Yummy girl like that. Yummy girl like that.
We're very
Okay. There's someone with a tray full of lunches. Lunches.
Oh, lunch is here.
That's the whole
point of the meeting.
Just
hurry it up.
It's really fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start it off. As Jane mentioned, I'm Brandolino and I do work for IBM. And my role with IBM is I'm a client technical architect, which basically just means that I help customers within a specific vertical segment with designing IT solutions and literally across the entire IBM portfolio. You can imagine that. So I think last count we have like something like 1,000 products. Yeah, it's pretty insane. Of course, I don't focus on all of them as far as that goes. But blockchain, you know, has been one that I'm focused on. So in most of the technologies that I don't have, a few inches deep and a mile wide. Having to go across the whole portfolio, and I try to myself as a team. So I'm also inspiring scientists. And that's the area where I decided that I'm going to focus more. Along with actually blockchain as well as hard and cognitive speech. So thank you for coming. And I think it was hard. Yes, so it was interesting when you said that there's a gap, right, between being able to understand the technology and actually the technology. And really, my role within IT for almost the past 30 years has been that exact role, basically, being that bridge between the business and actually trying to explain things in layman's terms and the actual technology that I've worked with over the years. So it's a real interesting place to be. And it's hard to do, actually. It's hard to find, you know, people that can use both sides of the brain in that way in order to make technology simple. So hopefully today, with what I have, I will achieve that goal, if anything. We're going to talk about Hyperledger Project and more on the private blockchain side of things versus the public. And how, you know, what some of the differences are, and then get into, at a certain level, the actual technology, the components of the technology, and tying that to the different roles that would be necessary in order to perform kind of the different aspects of building and maintaining and architecting a blockchain, basically. So. So in getting prepared for the presentation, Bruce and I actually were perusing YouTube, and we're trying to find, you know, just a quick video that we thought would explain blockchain as good as possible, right? So the best one out there to start the conversation off. So, and this is what we found. So I hope that it gives a really good explanation for you. Uh-oh, where's our audio? Hold on.
I've got it muted because I was getting feedback.
Oh. Sorry, I should have told you I was coming. That's okay.
So how many videos did you go through before you found this one?
How many did we go through?
A lot. We gotta watch it first.
We went through a lot.
And with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer digital currency. It's anonymous and decentralized. It's like being able to teleport money to anyone across the world. I think it's actually being teleported. So we have many peers tracking each and every Bitcoin on a public ledger called the blockchain. When you want to send someone a Bitcoin, you publicly announce that your account is stated Bitcoin to the recipient's account. Since the letters of public record, everyone knows Bitcoins are associated with each account. It prevents anyone from spending money that isn't there. And hold it, you bandits hold on for you, and then you go lock up. Make sure bandits didn't ride off. Bitcoin, banks are gone. All of that is your private key. The creature has a template that you access your account to your money from.
Vince Porto, Keymaster of Gozen.
No one can see other Bitcoins if you're a simple memory. That's why Bitcoin is a transaction managed pledge. How is that? By yourself, even the Winklevoss twins. Want to have Bitcoin for yourself? Sounds like one. Same for that, it brings a digital currency for shares of coin. And so on. So US dollars, at least for now.
Much clearer.
And he did it all with a straight face, that's amazing.
You don't need my presentation now, right? You totally get it? Oh, you want?
That's one.
You know, I've been fooling around with AI, machine learning.
Yeah.
And what's really weird is you can play that to the machine learning, and after listens for a while, it'll actually translate it and give you actual clear text.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's so cool.
I work with algorithms that do that.
Yeah, and actually Bluemix probably could do it. I did
Oh,
it
yeah.
with the Google stuff, but
Yeah. That's a whole nother meetup.
Yeah,
that I can
exactly.
do. Yeah, I've developed programs that do that and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
All good?
I think we are now successfully screen sharing. So.
It says it's sharing. Okay, so let's get right into the presentation. Okay. So like I said, this is going to be more around private blockchain and Hyperledger Project. So what is blockchain at a high level? It seems like we have a really good understanding with many people in the room, right, of what blockchain is at a high level. The fact that it's a a common, trusted, distributed ledger system, right, or network that shares business processes, basically. And what problem is blockchain attempting to solve, right? So this web here, basically, if you think about companies having to communicate with other companies, such as their vendors, suppliers, distributors, any number of other entities. Today, how that's done for the most part is via point-to-point connections between these companies, where the ledgers or the information that the companies are sharing is independent of one another. So I have my ledger, the supplier of mine has theirs, we have a point-to-point connection between us, and we're sharing information. You can imagine that lends itself to a lot of inconsistency, right, in between what I say we're doing and what my supplier says we're doing, as well as, there's standardized protocols out there, such as one called like EDI, if anyone's heard of that. Been around since like the 70s, but it's supposed to be a standard protocol, but there's like numerous different formats of it, which lends itself to those inconsistencies. So that becomes the problem. And ultimately it's inefficient, it's expensive for companies in order to be able to maintain these networks. There's whole teams of people within companies that just do reconciliation, of information that traverses between these companies. So what can blockchain do in order to solve that problem? Basically, it can create the distributed peer-to-peer network, right? And have a permissioned ledger that is a common ledger shared by all of those entities. And each participant into the blockchain has the ability to add and append information basically into the blockchain. And we'll get much deeper into how all of these items work, but some of the common aspects of blockchain are the ability to form consensus between all of the participants that are part of the blockchain itself. The ability to track provenance. Remember I mentioned like the live pet as a use case, tracking that live pet from the farm, let's say, all the way to the sale at the register. The immutability of it, so the ability for it to never be changed, basically. once it's included into the blockchain, and finality. So we like to call it blockchain for business, basically, to differentiate it from public blockchain, and the fact that we're solving business use cases by the use of a blockchain technology. So I'm not going to get too much into the actual use cases today, because we've done that in the past with Jay's meetups. And I decided, that it was a good time to focus more on the technology and actually the components and the roles that are necessary in order to make this stuff happen. But I put together kind of a quick, high-level differentiation between what most people are really familiar with, the public blockchain and/or the cryptocurrency side of things, right? So Bitcoin, etc., and the private side of things. And really, the main difference between the two is the fact that private blockchain is permissioned, right? So in a private blockchain, you have the ability to limit who has the ability to participate and or share information into the chain. And that can go all the way down to the transaction level, basically, in a private blockchain. You'll see, I'm going to get more into the security aspects of it, but it does require an invitation and validation and things like that in order for that member in a permissioned blockchain to contribute to the chain. And actually, conversely, cryptocurrency, public blockchains, if you think about it, they incent people to join, right? So it's the complete opposite, basically, of the private blockchain. The more the merrier, right, in the public blockchain space, which, as you can imagine, requires a ton of compute power, right, in order to pull that off and make that work. So some of the things we're going to dive more into as I go through this are the components, basically, or the requirements of a private blockchain for business, which are that shared ledger, the common place, right, where all the information ends up being stored. The smart contracts, which is essentially the rules, if you would, that are tied to what gets entered into the chain, basically. And we'll talk more about that as well. The privacy, right? So how are we accomplishing limiting who has access to blockchain? And the trust, basically, which turns out to be the consensus, basically. So everyone has to trust and concede. So some of the benefits, right, as you can imagine, it does save time. We've had some situations where, give you one example, like in IBM, we try to use the technologies that we're developing and talking to our customers about. So IBM Global Financing uses a blockchain, actually. And I forget the actual number, but it was substantial, like from plus a month in order to reconcile some of the transactions that take place with an IBM Global Financing down to, I want to say it was around 4 days, something like that, by using a blockchain. So, and that lends itself to the cost removal, basically, right? So you don't need as many resources to do those reconciliations and those audits and things like that in that scenario. Reduces risk and increases trust, basically, between yourself and whoever it is that you're participating in that business transaction with, basically. So Hyperledger itself is a Linux Foundation project, and IBM has chosen Hyperledger Project as the fabric, basically, of our blockchain services offering. And we're now into 2 releases of it. We have 0.6 and then 1.0, basically, that we offer. And I'll get into just a little bit about some of the differences, but overall, at a high level, there's many things that are very common, between the two, and as far as requirements that are necessary to accomplish a private blockchain. So, Linux Foundation, everyone's familiar, right, with who they are. There's specific people that are dedicated to Hyperledger and the projects that are underneath the Hyperledger umbrella. Hyperledger Project happens to be just one of its 5 or 6 or so projects that are being maintained by the Linux Foundation, and it's all open source, open standards. There's over 140 members. That was as of 2000, probably late 2016. So there's probably even more now. And we're, as IBM, we're a premier member. We actually have this guy here, Chris Ferris. He's a chair on the board, actually. So here's some of the members, and you can see many of the major financial institutions. American Express, who's here locally, is actually a premier member and contributes a lot, I would say, or at least some, to the development of the projects, as well as some of these other logos that you see there. So it's a very focused, widespread open source project with a lot of momentum, I would say, and a lot of smart people behind it. So Hyperledger Fabric, again, is one of the projects under the Hyperledger umbrella, and it's essentially the fabric, or you can almost look at it like the equivalent of an operating system, basically, within the blockchain environment that IBM has chosen to use. And talk a little bit more about this in a few slides, but it can be public or private. Do we have technical issues?
Eileen, are you getting the?
Oh, now it's moving. Is it a delay? Yeah.
There is a delay.
I've been watching it over here. It seems like
It's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Yeah, for some reason, I was watching yours. Yours was in some sort of loop.
Okay.
So it's, yours is apparently Turing complete, and everybody else is not Turing complete. Little blockchain joke.
So the fabric itself, I mean, these are some of the things that are components, if you would, of the fabric. And one of the really cool things, I think, are the ability to do channels. So if I had a blockchain environment, basically, that I've built, I have the ability to segment by channels different blockchains, if you would, that would include different participants. So I may have one channel that has participant A and B, and I may have another channel that has participant B and C, and then I may have another channel that has participants A, B, and C. And none of them cross over into each other. They're all specific to those participants for those channels, basically. So coming from, I have a pretty strong networking background. To me, an analogy for those of you that might understand would be like access control lists, basically kind of in the network world, is very similar how I would look at channels within the blockchain world, basically. There's also like network tooling that we've developed, and you'll see when we do the lab this afternoon, within our environment, where you can see like performance statistics, you can actually see the blocks as they propagate into the chain in the tool that we've developed for blockchain environments. So there's a lot of visibility, basically, into what's happening within the blockchain itself, which is really, really cool. And so I think that's just one other thing I'd like to point out from IBM's perspective. I mean, what we try to do, are there developers that can build and develop things, completely from the ground up? Yes, of course there are. Do companies necessarily have those kind of resources and the time within those resources to be able to do that? No, they really don't, right? So we try to meet that in the middle with developing, kind of higher level tooling that allows blockchain networks to be easily deployed within an environment, as well as the applications that are required in order to participate with the blockchain. Tooling to build those applications as well. So we try to make it as easy as possible, taking some of the development out of it in order to get to market faster and achieve the benefits of the use case associated to a blockchain. And you'll see as I move forward how some of that comes to fruition, and also we do the lab this afternoon. And actually, that's a good segue. So this Hyperledger Composer is just one of those tools, basically. So it's another thing under the Hyperledger umbrella, and basically this particular tool was developed in order to help build the applications that are required in order to interface with the blockchain. So if you can imagine, you know, everything requires an application, right? Kind of as the orchestrator that is the interface to the blockchain and or to the participants that are participating in the blockchain. So this tool actually helps you build those applications. And that kind of shows a good flow, right? It's a business application, Hyperledger Composer kind of in the middle, and then the Hyperledger Fabric, which again is kind of that operating system, right? That goes underneath that. We're not going to play around with this today. This could be kind of a whole meetup of its own as well. But just wanted to mention it, that it's a tool. So this is what, just at a high level, what the Hyperledger Fabric looks like in a visual depiction. Version 1 introduced the ordering service. The membership services provider would be like the certificate authority. I'm going to delve more into all of these items. And then there's that client application again, right, that we talked about as the orchestrator, basically. And the peer basically includes all of those. And we're going to talk much more about those items as well. So here's a comparison that we have. So we talked, you know, I heard Ethereum being brought up a lot, right? A lot of people are very familiar with that. Ripple's another one, public, Bitcoin public. Ethereum can go public or private. Hyperledger Fabric can go public or private as well. As far as IBM is concerned, it's private. Basically, our deployment is private because of you know, who our target market is and the use cases that we're trying to solve with blockchain. There's consensus network protocols that you can see. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, on the different protocols that are available, how you achieve consensus that's necessary within the blockchain. Also, I think another big one that stands out is the privacy aspect, right? So you look at Ethereum, you know, it's open, Ripple, Bitcoin, open. Hyperledger Fabric has the capability to be open to private. And we're going to talk more about the privacy aspects of that as well. Smart contracts today within Hyperledger Fabric are supported with a programming language called Daylong, actually, or Go for short. And some of the others, like Ethereum has Solidity, I guess, that I personally am not familiar with. The application itself, if you use that tool that I mentioned earlier to build the application, JavaScript, but applications can be built, you know, from the ground up, really, in any programming language to interface with blockchain. If someone chooses to do so, yes.
What's the transaction speed? Is it
like approximately 10 milliseconds? Is that
10 milliseconds?
Yeah.
What's the throughput? You mean what's the throughput?
It's improving by the minute, and part of the reason is because our Hyperledger is not we don't mine. We don't have to do mining.
Right.
But still, you don't want to use it for American Airlines reservation system just yet. It's not that high speed, but.
What's the limiting factor on the transaction speed, or what's allowing it to? You're saying it's getting faster. You're doing things that are making it faster. What's allowing, or what's enabling the speed up?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts, and I think Rose, you're not. Okay, so from the outside, from the traditional system comes an application, right? And kicks some things out through an API. And then that has to be validated by the rules that you just mentioned that are expressed in the smart contracts. That's really actually loaded and is running on the fabric. And there has to be agreement between different peers and nodes that are in the ecosystem so that this transaction is kosher, that it's okay. Once it is done, then it gets handed over to an ordering node that takes all the little components of the sub-transactions and put them in order, and then it can commit it, or another node can be a committing node, because once we reach consensus, then you can commit that transaction block to the chain, pointing back to the previous one. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and I have some more diagrams that kind of describe what Balazs just talked about, but all of that, including the quantities of each of those, right? How many peers, how many nodes, where do they reside, right?
Yeah.
In relation to even the application, all these things kind of come into play.
So the communication latency between the nodes, depending on where they're located.
Yeah, essentially, that's part of it, right?
There's some amount of work that goes on for the consensus too.
There is, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because each participant has to proceed.
When you say the consensus network, is that the application protocol or in the OSI set network layer? Is that the application protocol?
I'm going to get to that, and I think when I show the visual of that, it'll probably make more sense. Okay, where it resides within the components. Okay. Okay, so if we think about this from the actors or components and or roles, let's say employee roles, within an environment to build and or maintain and or communicate with, let's say a blockchain environment. These are the things that, that we see. So a regulator that performs oversight, a blockchain architect, right, who's more the visionary across how this thing should look, and there's some more details on that too, but not only technical requirements, need to be looked at from the blockchain architect, but also business requirements, right? And what some of those risks and rewards are associated to that. The developer that actually creates the application itself, a network operator that would kind of own and maintain the environment going forward. Blockchain can actually communicate with traditional data sources and or traditional systems of record, different things like that. We also, I think it was mentioned in the room about blockchain acquiring information from sensors, IoT devices, things like that. So communication like that would be another participant. Membership services, so the security aspect associated with a private blockchain, and then the actual users, or I'll call them the participants themselves, right, that are inputting information into the blockchain.
So your private network could have its own set of IPs. It's actually literally a private network?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is just a deeper dive on the actors. So some of the components, which we're going to get much more information on many of these, but this is just a high-level list here. I'll kind of fast forward this stuff over the essence of time. So if we talk about the developer themselves, right? The developer is the one who's going to develop the application itself that the participants interface with. And when we do the lab this afternoon, you'll actually see what an application, it's a very simple one, but it's an application nonetheless, what it looks like that the participants would interface with, basically. So that'll help, I think, set off some light bulbs as well. So the developer develops that application as well as the application logic associated to the smart contract itself. And also the interaction, let's say, between those applications and these other things that may be communicating with the blockchain. So it might be events from a system of record, it might be events from an IoT device, it might be integration with an actual system acquiring information and or pushing information to an existing system like an ERP, enterprise resource planning type platform, anything like that. Any legacy systems, traditional data sources, and obviously the ledger, right, itself. And we're going to talk some more about the ledger too. So the developer, shouldn't have any involvement with anything that's not development related, right? Which would be peers, consensus, and security, and you'll see why as we move along. So here's more about the ledger itself. So the ledger consists of the information that's included within the blockchain. And the blockchain itself, it's an append-only chain. So as new information, as a participant adds and or a system and or an IoT sensor, an event, whatever it is that's adding a block to the blockchain gets added, that particular block can never be changed. And the next block gets added behind it, basically. And there's a hash mechanism, which I think is talked about on the next slide, actually, that's in place that prevents the intrusion, basically, into those blocks from occurring. And you'll also see in the lab, I think in more detail, blocks actually describes that transaction that occurred within that block. So it could be 0 transactions, it could be 1, or it could be 10, depending on what that participant or what that system contributed into the blockchain, basically. And as I mentioned, they can't be tampered. And then,
as those chains get longer and longer, have you found it? Do you sometimes need to take like the old versions and set them on a different place to speed things up? It seems like that chain is going to get. As a data guy, I know how long that's going to get.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be, at some point, it'll be impractical.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think that happens.
Okay, so there's different ways because storage is getting, it is cheaper. There's a revolution in the amount of storage that we get. One exciting thing coming up is storing it on DNA. DNA you can store a whole lot more than any other stuff. But yes, backup, recovery, and archiving is one aspect that's really being worked right now. And how you, let's say, break a chain and then start a new one with the previous. There's a lot of discussions around that, but we're not into this technology that deeply that we're talking about terabytes long chains, because the chains are really, mainly storing the hash value. What state or outside is in your traditional system where you're still storing the blogs, the images, the videos, and the other things that a lot of people would like to bring onto the blockchain.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue.
It's like the logs aren't stored in the chain or anything, they're outside.
Even so, if you
over
scale
time,
them
it's
to an
something
enterprise level, they're still going to get massive.
that may need to be solved, right?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
So
One of the, go ahead.
Bitcoin has considered something like it's called pegging, where since every block essentially is a hash that has a hash pointer to the previous block, if there's no necessary reason to always keep going back to the Genesis block, you can take that offline, peg it at say block 100, and then you can just trust that that hash is pointing back and back and back and back. So you can kind of like save the state at a certain peg.
Yeah, and I could see in the Bitcoin world where that would be, even at this stage, probably necessary, right? Because it's been around so long, it's, they encourage participation and things like that. In our world, in private blockchain, we're just not there yet. Not to say that, it might not get there at some point.
One of the projects you talked about in Hyperledger Sawtooth is addressing a lot of the scale issues here. Their poet proof of elapsed time is part of, hey, what do we need as we have consensus in a private blockchain? What do we need to keep across the nodes? Then what you may keep on your individual, could be more. You talked a little bit about the world state, the database. Question on that, is there a database, we database agnostic? What would we look at from the world state database?
Right, and currently we're not. There's a couple databases that are supported. Just, typical key value, right? But the world state, just because we didn't really get there, is where everything is stored, basically. That gets included into the chain. The world state is like the state of truth, basically.
So
It's got your line.
But it's not necessarily immutable like the blockchain itself, right?
So would it be something like the blockchain would be the element that every party in the private blockchain world agrees on, and then the world state is managed by a particular node or party that summarizes what's on.
There's a world state per peer, basically.
Per peer.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's like the summation of what's in the blockchain itself,
Yes.
that you can reference very quickly.
Yes,
Okay.
and there's, I think, a
Right.
picture that shows that too.
Yeah, okay, so then that might even be a solution down the line where you just summarize the block and maybe a few centralized nodes for the entire blockchain. Okay, I just want to make sure I got that.
So, Blas, if I understood you correctly, DNA is the superior storage mechanism? So my wife's overtures to put a chip in me is actually behind the times?
Exactly.
I would run some queries on your intention. I can write that SQL query.
So in the future, we'll use vials of blood like Angelina Jolie, right?
Oh, yeah. Scary. So you guys heard, I mentioned the Genesis, right? That was your first meetup, right? We're gonna, in the blockchain world, we call it the Genesis. Well, the first block in a blockchain is the Genesis block, basically. So that's where that came from. Yeah. So this is kind of a visual depiction, very simplistic and high level, but you can see each block has its own hash, right? And each block has the hash of the previous block as part of its block. And that's how it's able to secure. Each block has its own hash, right? Each block has. You don't want to hear me twice, I swear.
There's a button.
Twice and delayed.
So F keys.
Turn it down. Can you turn down the volume?
What are the F keys?
Oh, no. How'd you get it work? How'd you get it work?
I'm actually LinkedIn.
You have calm.
No, I'm using Safari.
Really? You good now? Good now? Okay. So you can see different numbers of transactions can be in each block as well, right? So imagine, this long chain and having the hash of the previous block. I mean, you literally have to go back to the beginning, right, in order to affect something within a blockchain, which is what makes it so powerful, basically. Okay, so
I have a question about transaction cost. Is there such a thing inside of Hyperledger? I know in Ethereum you have to pay a gas fee for each transaction. Is there something like that?
No. Like, do we charge a per transaction fee? No. No. Our model is, and you'll kind of see when we do the lab too. It depends on where your blockchain resides, but there's essentially environment fees, right, on a monthly basis or an annual basis that you pay in order to have the full environment, basically.
But Chad's setting up his own, right? You have participants on a network. You want to have your own private. Could you charge by transaction? So
Probably.
you're probably going there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's just not our business model as the environment, as the company that sets up the environment. But There's
If
many
you've got a
different
smart
business models.
contract built into this, you could probably set up something comparable to the gas and the ether coin.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't look like you need that in order to overcome the Turing completeness like Ethereum. Ethereum uses that currency component to overcome the Turing completeness. Bitcoin is not Turing complete by design because they didn't want, Satoshi Nakamoto did not want the possibility of an infinite loop happening in the Bitcoin blockchain. Vitalik Buterin, on the other hand, came up with this idea that you could make something Turing complete, which opens up these smart contracts, but you overcome the Turing completeness and eliminate the loop possibility by putting in this gas and ether. We'll see if that actually works over the long term.
I thought the gas was to prevent the denial of service attack. Because if you bombard the network with transactions, you can like the fake transactions or little transactions, and there's no cost to doing that as an attacker, then it becomes it's an easy way to attack.
Let's not get into, this is a great conversation, believe me, but in the interest of time, why don't we continue with the presentation, and we can maybe have some conversations later about gas versus no gas and all that stuff.
Okay, yeah, gas versus no gas to me is how to order your water in Europe, right? So, the one thing that I will say though, in our world, is we see a lot of different business models being developed, right? And, you know, one of them would be like a Walmart, right, who likes to have a certain element of control, let's say, over their suppliers, being willing to develop the blockchain and kind of own the environment and so forth, and require, let's say, at some point, their suppliers and their distributors or whomever be part of it, right? Another one is there's, you know, individual companies out there, startups, things like consortiums, that are building new business models, like in supply chain, right? Using blockchain as the underlying technology. I've seen other companies that are, like I have a distribution company, as an example, that is embarking on a completely new business model for them, where they're going to use blockchain and actually as the underlying technology, but what they really ultimately want to sell to their customers, who are companies that need a distributor, is a managed solution that is associated to their customers' environment in order to help them manage their environment better. So, I mean, when we said earlier, you know, that the sky's the limit, really, as far as possibilities of using blockchain as the underlying technology, it really is. It really is. And, you know, just getting really creative with it, I think, and, you know, who would think a distribution company would turn themselves into like a managed solutions provider, right? All based around IT, in an app, as an example, that they would give their customer to manage something beyond just the distribution aspect of it.
But you can just use the blockchain by itself. You don't have to add all this other stuff to it.
Sure you can. Yeah, but in our world, you know, with the business blockchain or private blockchain, it's really about, you know, because we're talking to customers about how can they derive value, right, from using blockchain as a technology. And so we're trying to solve business issues on their behalf, right? And or, which ultimately amounts to reducing costs, right, increasing efficiency, or increasing revenue at the end of the day. So increasing revenue means building new business models for their customer base, and they're willing to delve into it and take a stab at it, then that's a great thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause that's what I'm planning on doing, just using the blockchain part first, and then just using it as a glorified GitHub between devices. And then you can just add the key part and the Bitcoin or whatever after the fact.
Yeah, yeah. I almost, I think about it differently. I think about it from what am I trying to solve first and working backwards versus working from the bottom up. But it just depends on what your ultimate goals are,
Yeah.
what you're trying to achieve. Does somebody have a question?
Start an example of aviation spare parts where they have to have complete provenance.
Yes.
Is that, have you seen those distributors go into this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. That's one of.
Korean Air was one of the first out of the gate. Korean Air is right there with aviation parts maintenance. And rivets, in fact, rivets right now are a big topic for airlines. I'll get into use cases.
No.
It's the FAA, right?
That's
New
required.
FAA requirements. So, yeah.
So being able to trace it all the way back, so that when something does happen, we can go back and figure it out. Or if there's a known issue, we can figure out where all those rivets would be and have them replaced.
So what I know the small, $20 million like distributor in town, and they are pretty backwards in their technology. Would that be a?
So for the blockchain, size doesn't matter, right? That is a great example of Boeing having a small distributor right there tied to Lufthansa, right? That network very, very easy to on-ramp and then be to participate, right? So I think that that's one of the kind of levels that playing field.
Could you more specifically, when you say the business application, does that the blockchain eliminate the transaction? Because usually it goes through the banking to do the transaction between the business. Does that eliminate the transaction in the banking and the others? Really, how do you reduce the cost for the company? Especially for yes.
Yeah, so, blockchain, so many of the use cases do not necessarily include banking, right? Because what we're talking about here are private blockchains that are used in order to track something, right? Yeah, where airplane parts is a good example, right? They're very expensive. Being able to track the provenance of those parts from inception, all the way through to its use and throughout its use life cycle, is a good use case of including all of that information into the blockchain that would be searchable, right, at any time in order to acquire information. Whereas prior to it being included in the blockchain, maybe some of this information from this part of the supply chain back wasn't even captured at all. So, that information isn't even available, let's say, without a blockchain. And the information from here forward may be in disparate places where it's not easily searchable, let's say in a single database as an example. So there's a lot of areas where efficiencies go up and costs go down, depending on what it is that you're solving for business. Literally with, so if you think about how information is exchanged today between businesses, sometimes in supply chains, if you go really far back in the process, it's not even feasible to have technology take the pig farm that's out in the boonies of, anywhere. Technology may not be, they're not going to have an EDI connection, let's say, to the next step in the supply chain in order to provide their information for when they sent their pig out to slaughter, as an example. With blockchain, you literally, as long as there's an internet connection at that pig farm, type of lower cost technology in use at that farm, like an ear tag on a pig or something like that, that actually allows that to be part of the chain now, part of that supply chain. So now you have that information from inception all the way through each step of the process, which makes it that much more powerful, right? And where the efficiencies come in, let's say you're tracking, you have a outbreak of salmonella, I don't know what kind of diseases end up in pork these days, but let's say you have something that's a public safety issue and you need to trace where that came from. If you can go all the way back to that actual pig by the information that's stored on a blockchain, you could solve, right, that public safety issue much quicker than if you don't have that information and you're trying to embark on some manual process with mediators and all kinds of stuff that might take months, right, in order to solve it. So that's kind of what we need.
Exactly. If you have like a warehouse where you got like 200,000 or 300,000 pigs at one time, you can actually track it to where the pig has been and who they've been near.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, okay, this pig has gone through this and this stall and contacted these people, but you don't need to know that ahead of time. You just go back to the history and you go, oh, okay, where's this pig? And all of a sudden you can see where it's traveled and where it's been throughout its entire life. And you'll know, like, okay, this is so instead of killing out all the pigs in the whole place, you only need to get to that section of it. You don't, And it has nothing to do with money yet. So,
Right.
To
It's
the
all
point
about
that it
business
does tie to
process.
money, the identity to identify the participants in the network, right? So the banks are interested in speeding that up. Secondly, they're interested in settling as quick as possible. Like 210 net 30, why do I need to wait 10? You already know you have it. So the bank can receive money faster, right? And then anything that's cross-border has its own issues with cross-border payments. All those, the banker has a role in this now that would benefit.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll start to say the bank has value. Now, if you kept it in a digital currency, is the banker then disintermediate? It's going to take it to a total different place.
Right.
So in your space, let's leave that over there.
Yeah.
But I think the important point you need to understand is that it's not just money. You can have any amount of data.
Right.
And because it's immutable and it's secure and all that stuff, it means that all the stuff that you collect is secure in the same way that money is.
Right.
So so it's like saying, okay, every piece of money you use it to write down, your notes. And it's just as secure, and you can keep track of the data just as though it was money. How much is that worth to you?
Yes.
It's worth a lot. and-
Tracking is the.
Right. So if I can take that use case kind of a step further, right? And let's say those pigs are now made into pork chops, right? And they're being distributed into a grocery store. And there's IoT, sticker sensors or something on the boxes within the truck, right? That are sensing the temperature of that pork as it gets transported into the store. Well, that information is added into the blockchain. And oh, by the way, if the temperature of that box within that truck goes below a certain threshold, you can trigger an event to, maybe the distribution company to alert the driver, hey, you have an issue, right? With your temperature within your reefer or whatever, you need to pull over and fix it, sort of thing. So it becomes almost, not to use a pun, but a chain of events, right? That can actually happen along this path. And really in my eyes, the more of those things that you can include along the chain, the better your use case becomes, right? The more valuable it becomes because you're solving more and more things for these companies.
Yeah, I mean, like one good example is with Costco. Costco has a product that's being recalled, and they can instantly say, yeah, this person bought this can that was date-coded this and this. If there's a salmonella poisoning, for instance, they would know like where every case of stuff where it was produced and who bought the material, and send you an email or a piece of, send you mail and say, okay, this product's being recalled within a day.
Yeah, you can immediately tie it back in an automated fashion versus the manual labor that goes into that today. In some cases, they can't even figure it out today.
All this tracking information also keep in the world state of thing, right?
Yeah.
It could, yes, oh yes, it's in the world state.
That will be the huge.
Yes, it's all in the world state, yeah.
And you can tie it to smart contracts and say, I'm not going to receive a cold chain, to use the term. I'm not going to receive the pork because it went above or below. Our smart contract said, I'm only going to do business when it's in this range.
Yes.
So once it hits either my VC or store, I'm out, right? I don't have to accept it. You broke the contract, the smart contract has the code, didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, no gangster involved, right?
Right. That's right.
They'll figure out a way.
So this kind of, a much more simplistic view of what we kind of just described actually is what this shows. It shows the transaction input right from the participant on the blockchain being sent from the application. So in this case, it's changing the owner of a car to Matt, basically. And it goes to the smart contract, and the smart contract basically approves it, that, yeah, it's okay, you know, the new owner of this car can be Matt. And then, as we said, you know, everything goes into the chain and then ends up in the world state, basically.
Do you know currently what the maximum numbers of transaction rates are in terms of how many transactions? I know Lars mentioned something about 10 millisecond earlier.
Yeah, I like I said, it's changing by the hour, and it really depends on also the number of nodes, and so we're still pretty well pioneering in the
tools out there for
technology.
guesstimating? Does we build a tool to guesstimate that?
Like a ping for.
Well, yeah, because like
a modeling tool of some kind.
Yeah, I don't want to take Rose's time, but yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I'll look that up because at Maersk, we're tracking every container within their network. And they're getting hammered. The GPS signal. I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's why I'm working on a mesh.
Yeah.
I don't think we've hit like anywhere near where that threshold would, you know, a problem would be. So, I mean, if you can imagine, we're tying IoT right into this, and you know, there's
it's a lot of data.
Tons of transactions, tons of data, tons of transactions.
Yay!
And in our world, it's better.
Yeah.
But we still need to figure out how to use that data and garner insights out of it. So we're kind of we need to move a little faster, just in the essence of time, so that we can eat. So here it just shows how the applications interact. It's really exactly what we've been describing already, right? Application, the orchestrator, right? Smart contracts, it has the business logic. The world state and the blockchain itself are considered the ledger. And then everything, including the smart contract, is considered the peer, basically, in this world, as far as terminology is concerned.
All that the blockchain contains is that list of hashes. So where is the actual data stored for analysis?
In the world state, which is a key value database.
How is it tagged to the transaction? How is the word state tagged to the transaction? How do I know for this transaction this is the data?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the actual identifier is. Yeah.
All your
yeah.
hashes report back.
Yeah.
They'll get back to source. Each one is a reference to the other.
Yeah, but that's in the blockchain itself. I know what you're saying, like what's the identifier in the world state that it's that specific block, right?
The interface between the two.
There's an identifier. Actually, I have some.
It should have some link.
The what?
It should have some link. Otherwise,
Oh, yeah. There's definitely, yeah.
Can we answer the question?
Do you mean like from a network perspective, how it connects, or?
Let's say if we want, so we talked about an example where we can track each and every transaction of the product, right? So back to the history. So let's say like 3 or 4 events, like if I have to say this is in state, so how do I track it? Because all that we are storing on the blockchain is just a hash. Right? So by looking at the hash, I cannot tell you what data.
Think about it.
Right, so all the information in the transaction itself, and it depends on how how it's built to store that information within the block from a transaction perspective. You know, is it car maker, you know, and then X? Is it, you know, what those key values look like? That's what gets translated over into the world state, basically, which is just a key value data store. If that makes sense. And then that world state database is what's searchable, basically, in order to you know, derive insights, basically, from the information that you have within that database.
That should have the mapping.
Yeah, Yeah, and you're really developing kind of what that mapping is gonna look like, depending on the case that you're solving, right? And what information you're trying to derive from whatever source you're deriving it from, right? Sure. So events, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Events can be, we said an event can go out, right, with the temperature warning, let's say, if it falls outside of the thresholds that are set, let's say within the smart contract. And that way an immediate response can be acquired and or an automated response. So those events can go to, a person, it can go to a system of record, it can go to pretty much anywhere. And they're two-way. So events can come in and events can go out depending on how things are set up. And then we talked about integrating with existing systems, right? So this is kind of just a picture showing that. And it's all done via middleware, basically, right? So there's several different protocols that are available, that it's typically going to be through a gateway, how those interactions occur between existing systems and the blockchain. And or, if it's IoT devices and the blockchain, whatever it is. And all this stuff are things that the enterprise architect, right, takes into consideration when they're building out the potential environment to build and support a blockchain network.
Yeah, so this is still running over the public internet.
It could, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
A lot of stuff runs on-prem, so.
Yeah.
Right. And at some point it is, right? So, unless it's solely an internal blockchain that is only to support, let's say, a specific company and people within that company, typically, that could be a private network situation, right? Even, I guess, the network access of an application of someone outside contributing to the blockchain could use a VPN type technology or something, right? But that would still be over the public internet, right, at that stage. So it can vary, right, depending on how it's architected, I would say, to support that.
Part of the beauty of this whole construct is even if you've got this private permission blockchain running in some sort of network configuration that might be, open to the internet, you've got all kinds of checks and balances to assure that the trust and the integrity of the whole thing is there.
Yeah, it's more secure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that there's a stronger, in my view, thing being agreed upon even among a closed system.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to fast forward to try to get to a little bit of the security just so that we can address that. So here's the peers, basically. The peers, remember, is that whole environment that we said that includes the ledger and everything. It says there, holds and maintains the ledger, basically. Receives the transactions, right, from the applications and other peers. I think your batteries.
Yeah, we're not going to have any choice. We're going to have to.
Oh, you don't have a port? I have a port.
No, I've got an electrical issue on my notebook, so it's going to need to hopefully recharge over lunch.
Good.
Okay, all right. So how long do we have?
Not long.
Okay. We can always plug it into mine if we have.
Is this presentation accessible anywhere?
Yeah. What I can do is send Jay the link to it, and you can post it on Meetup.
Awesome. Yeah, because I don't have permission to that URL.
Yeah, I can give it to you.
I can get to the slides, but I can't save it.
Oh.
If I sign in.
I have it so that you can't download it, actually.
Well, it's a sign-in thing, but I think you have to have an IBM email address.
You do, yeah, because I have it. It's actually in box. Yeah.
I've got a bicycle.
So let's see, we kind of talked about the flow, right, of a transaction. These are some of, so we said, you know, as these transactions are added to the chain, right, consensus is required by all participants in that chain or that channel in order to kind of sanction that particular transaction. And these are some of the consensus algorithms that are currently used. Some of these are lends itself to the private side, and some are public, actually. The PBFT is what we used on 0.6 with Hyperledger Fabric, and Kafka Zookeeper is what's used on 1.0, although actual consensus is not achieved at this time on 1.0, it's still a work in progress.
And we're going to SBFD.
Yeah, for the new, for
For the
1.0.
new.
I forwarded that link to Eileen and she'll post it on the meetup if that's okay with you.
This link here?
Yeah.
They're not gonna be able to get into this link.
Oh, but the link that you gave.
I'm gonna give you a new one.
Oh, you're gonna give me
Yeah,
a new one.
sorry, yeah, I have
Hold
to,
Sorry.
yeah. I have to do a little massage.
Glad I checked.
Send it over, sorry. Right now I have some checks and balances.
Oh, so we can drain your bank account if we get that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's all Bitcoin, so.
Yeah, you wanna play poker?
Rose, you can trust us.
Right. So you guys can look through some of this stuff. It's just the pros and cons associated with some of those consensus algorithms. You know, the real world versus digital identity and how things are stored in a wallet, basically, when we talk about the certificate authority. So I think there's a picture here that probably.
While you're scrolling through,
Okay.
for those of you that are listening on the recording or live stream or Google Hangout, we'll resume about, let's say, 1:15 today, and we'll start a new Google Hangout. So this one will end, we'll have a different link, and it will be posted on the desertblockchain.com front page.
Okay.
Okay. So this is just a picture that shows how the certificate authority can work within a blockchain. So the users request the certificate, the authority. You know, it's no different than how it works in other applications, basically. And then there's encryption and decryption, right, that takes place as well from a security perspective at a high level.
So have you considered the impact of having IPFS be involved in all this? In terms of how they.
What's IPFS?
Obviously not
The
concerned.
interplanetary file system, there's some big fans in the room for the IPFS.
Oh,
Let's not get into that. Let's not get
I'm
into
not familiar
that.
with it.
Okay, fair, yeah, fair answer. Good
Sorry.
enough.
It's okay.
Remember, mile wide. I will add that one to my dictionary of acronyms.
Oh, okay.
I promise. So we already kind of talked about the architect, right, and some of the considerations that the architect has to think about. And some of them that I hear, this just to share with the room from our customers are, you know, ultimately someone does have to build, as easy as it may be, build and maintain the blockchain environment, right, on behalf of all the participants that are going to be part of it. And, you know, some of my customers say, well, I'm not sure I want to do that, or how do I do that, right? How much does it take for me to do that?
But wouldn't, from a business perspective,
Mhm.
wouldn't it make a lot of sense for them to own that underlying platform, because then they can start to charge subscriptions to host to that, right?
Yeah, it depends on the customer, depends on the use case.
Depends on how much they understand that.
Yeah, how much they understand that, if they have the vision of the possible, right,
Right.
where they could actually charge for things. Or, you know, is that overstepping their boundaries with their vendors and with their suppliers? You know, it really depends on their current business model too. Really, you know, if we can get customers into more of the mindset of, you know, it really isn't that resource intensive, you know, and really think about it as a distributed network, and, you know, it's really going to be more cost effective in these other areas. versus what it takes to maintain it. Those sort of conversations for the new business models that you can get out of it, whether it's charging per transaction or whether it's providing, something shiny and new to your customer base or anything in between. There's a lot of different options. But because, it's new for all of us in the room, right? It's new for our customers as well. And it's really getting the different layers within a customer, not just IT, right? It's the different business segments as well. It's supply chain. It's, the owners of the different business segments that might find a use case valuable for blockchain and really getting their minds wrapped around it too. So it takes time. Basically. Yeah. That's really about it, actually. So unless there's any other questions that we can answer.
Why don't we, it's 12:15 right now, why don't we go ahead and break for lunch and come back, assemble at 1:15. Please help yourself to the morning buffet. They're gonna take that away in a few minutes, so,
Do you want some fruit for dessert?
if you want some fruit for dessert, or
Even though
bagels for
there's
later, whatever, please help yourself.
Yeah.
But let's plan to, we'll shut this down and resume at 1:15.
Okay.
There are lunches out here in the hall, and one set of boxes has T on it, the other has V, so I assume it's
Vegetarian and turkey.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
welcome.
I'm just-
You're here for lunch.
And honestly, guys, there should be 50 lunches out there. So if anybody wants to or wants one to take home, to your kid or whatever, feel free to grab another one once everybody gets one.
Just to kind of talk through some.
Yeah.
And like I said,
What do you think?
yeah.